Thank you for accessing this video. My name is Chris Martin, and I'm the occupational psychologist who has been working across health and social care to develop the leadership success profile for you. And in this short session, what I'd like to do is really just describe who it's for, how to use it, and how you can get the most from it. So I guess just some important context and background that's helpful to understand is, first of all, it's been designed very much with all leaders in mind. So the operational manager leadership success profile is for everybody in a leadership role other than those in director level posts. It's also been designed to be used across health and care in Scotland, and indeed we've had quite a lot of involvement and contribution from the voluntary sector as well. So it should be seen as relevant to leaders working within that broad variety of organisations. In terms of its purpose, and we'll go into a little bit more detail around this shortly, and specifically how you might want to use it yourself. But at a broad level, its purpose is to provide a holistic framework which really draws our attention and understanding together of the full breadth of qualities and characteristics needed to operate successfully as a leader. And an integral part of that is about ensuring that in terms of the style of leadership, the type of cultures that we're looking to develop, and the services that are provided to users, that equality, diversity, and inclusion are very much at the core of all of those elements. So it is in essence about describing what an inclusive style of leadership is about, and the long-term impact and implications that has on teams and users. And then finally, in terms of how it was developed, so there's actually been extensive engagement and research across the wider system within Scotland over the last 4 years. And that has included a very broad variety of stakeholders, ranging from policymakers in Scottish Government to the most senior leaders across health and social care. And that's also included frontline teams and those actually providing services to users. And the intention has been very much to ensure that what's being developed is as relevant to the future as it is to the here and now, and it's very much underpinned by some of the values and cultural aspirations that we know are so important. So, in a nutshell, you can think of this as being multi-sector. It is for all leaders, as I've said, apart from those at director level. It's designed to be relevant to you throughout your career, and ideally there to support you with your growth, and helping you in making the right decisions and choices. And I guess more specifically, if we're thinking about how you might want to apply and use this, I guess there are three particular situations or groups of people that I think this could be particularly helpful for, that were very much in the forefront of our mind. So the first is those who are considering moving into their first leadership role. And I think for you, it's particularly helpful at giving you a sense of what's required, what would be needed from you, and what the implications are from both a development perspective, and also preparing yourself for making that transition. The next group is those who are currently in leadership roles, and we know, all the research tells us, that leadership is no different to anything else, in terms of there is always room for improvement and growth, and we know that as the needs of users and policies change, there is a need for us to be able to adapt and be flexible as leaders ourselves. So very relevant in terms of helping you to reflect upon how you're performing currently. And there is a Leading to Change 360 that is based upon the leadership success profile that you can use for those of you wanting to do that in a slightly more robust manner. And then the third group is really those who are considering a different type of leadership role. And what's particularly important for those of you thinking about making this change is really about understanding what's different, what might be expected from you that would be different from what you're doing currently, and how you can get a sense of of the areas that you might need to get greater exposure to feel confident to make that change. So the leadership success profile itself is structured around three key elements. And the first of these we describe as behaviors. So often in layman's terms, these are described as the outside, because these are the observable things that people do or say. And as I've alluded to already, these are the sort of things that we can measure in a 360, and there is a 360 available for you to do this. But also sometimes people just find it really helpful just to look through these and understand these in order to do a bit of self-reflection. The next chunk is personality, values, and motivation. And we tend to describe these sort of characteristics as being on the inside. So they are the things that aren't necessarily observable or noticeable immediately to other people, but they're so important in shaping the way in which you approach the world around you, and certainly your leadership style. And then the third element we described as the transition requirements. And these are the adjustments required from us when we move into our first leadership role, and we look at potentially moving into other types of leadership role throughout our career. So what I'd like to do now is just touch upon each of these three areas in a little bit more detail, so you can understand how, again, you might want to be using these to help you as an individual. So in terms of the behaviors that I've talked about, these have been summarized in relation to three key clusters. And the reason we put them into these clusters and this structure is just to help with usability and to help you to think a little bit about yourself and perhaps which areas you may be scoring higher or lower around. Each of these three clusters then has three further dimensions. You can see for enabling outcomes, these are the three dimensions that we look at. And then these, for each of these, there are a set of 5 behavioral descriptors. So in total, the behavioral element of the leadership success profile has 45 behaviors. And as I've alluded to already, these can be found within the 360, but you may just choose to sort of look at these individually as a way of reflecting. So that's how the behavioral element stacks up, and it's probably the area where we have the most detail for you to go into and look at yourself. The next element, the values, motivations, and personality constructs. What we've done here is identified the traits which really impact upon leadership style most significantly. These came about very much through the engagement work that we did, I referred to earlier. And so for example, you can see here, this is the first sort of pairing. And on the left-hand side, we're talking about empowerment. And on the right-hand side, those who are perhaps more focused around directing or direction. And these are both important characteristics. But the risk sometimes when you look at these, and you can see there's a whole series of here for you to look and reflect upon, is that people tend to have a preference for one side more than the other of each of these pairings. And really what we're looking to do here is encourage people to think about how they can balance these areas as effectively as possible. For each of them, we've also identified a potential risk factor. So you can see these are the risk factors for the first area, which are very much about what happens when these areas are perhaps overplayed. And each of the following have their corresponding risk factors as well. And we tend to find that people find this really helpful for reflecting upon where perhaps they might need to develop the breadth of their style, and perhaps in identifying specific risks. Again, for those who want to go into this in a bit more depth, you could use a psychometric tool, but many just find this very helpful in its current form. Finally, the last area we look at is the transition requirements. And what we've looked to do here is summarize some of the key transitions that we think are important depending upon the type of leadership role that you're in and are looking to move towards. So the three main areas we've looked at are, first of all, those who are looking to move from essentially managing themselves to leading a team for the first time. Secondly, those who are looking to move perhaps from a team leadership type role where they're leading a frontline team to moving into a role where they're leading managers for the first time. And then the last transition that we look at is those who are perhaps looking to shift from that previous role where you're leading managers to actually leading a department or a function which becomes significantly larger and more complex in terms of the nature of the role. So for each of these, what we've looked to do is identify what would be required from you in the role you're in currently, and how that might then be different for the role that you would be looking to move to. So you can see from this first area, for enabling outcomes, shaping cultures, and empowering systems, we've described what is often considered to be some of the key requirements for people who are managing themselves, often in a frontline team. And on the right-hand side, you can see the shift, the difference that's required when you move into that first team leadership role. And the same has been reflected for each of these. Now, clearly, there are hundreds of different leadership roles across health and social care within Scotland. So this won't work perfectly for everybody, but the intention is for this to be relevant to the majority of people, and particularly those looking to either enhance their current effectiveness within their current role or perhaps move to another role. So that is as far as we're going to go in this particular video. I hope that's been helpful, and there are more resources and more information available on the Leading to Change website. So please do feel free to access that following this presentation. Thank you.